The calm before the storm. The Galactic Council ruled over the stars. From their vast citadel, they watched the universe unfold, their power stretching across hundreds of worlds. The races of the galaxy bowed to them, their laws enforced by fleets of mighty warships. They had seen many worlds rise and fall, but Earth, a small, forgotten planet, was of little concern. Humanity was nothing more than an afterthought, a species with barely enough technology to leave their own solar system. The Council considered them weak, primitive, and insignificant. On Earth, life was far from what the Council imagined. Humans lived in peace, but they were always determined, always searching for something greater. They had built cities and conquered the land, sea, and air. They had made it to the stars, but only on their own terms, without any real interference from galactic powers. They were a quiet species, working in the shadows, learning, evolving, and preparing. No one in the galaxy, not even the most brilliant minds of the Council, had any idea just how far humanity had come. The Council sat in their grand chamber, the most powerful beings in the galaxy, discussing trivial matters. They laughed about the latest news of human space exploration. "They're still using primitive rockets," one member scoffed. "They'll be lucky to leave their solar system in another 100 years. The others chuckled. They knew there was no real threat from Earth. Humans were far too small, far too weak to challenge the might of the galaxy's greatest empire. But all that was about to change. It began with a signal, a strange signal that cut through the endless void of space. It was weak, almost too faint to detect, but its frequency was unusual. It wasn't the typical noise of a star or a passing asteroid. No, this was something different. The signal came from the outskirts of Earth's solar system, far beyond the reach of any known ships or satellites. The Council ignored it at first, dismissing it as another odd anomaly, something to be forgotten. But then a second signal came, and then a third. Each one was clearer, more direct. The Council began to take notice. Could this be some kind of communication? One of the Council members asked, puzzled. The galaxy had seen its fair share of strange occurrences, but this was different. The signals were getting stronger. They seemed to be intentionally directed at the Council. After a few days of investigation, the Council learned something they hadn't expected. The signal was human. Earth's scientists had somehow managed to transmit a message far beyond their solar system, and they weren't just sending random data. They were sending a message. At first, the Council couldn't believe it. Earth had been isolated, ignored for centuries. But the more they analyzed the signals, the more they realized something terrifying. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for a long time. The signals weren't just random bursts of information. They were a carefully calculated invitation. An invitation to meet, to communicate, to join the Galactic Order. The Council's top strategists and diplomats began to scramble. How had Earth managed to send such a message? They had no way of knowing, but they knew one thing. Humanity was no longer the insignificant species they had once believed them to be. The Council convened in urgent session. They discussed what to do next. A few argued that the humans might be planning some kind of trick, a trap to deceive the galaxy into thinking they were stronger than they really were. But others feared the worst. What if humanity had discovered something that the Council had missed? What if Earth had built something powerful, something they didn't understand? The tension in the room was thick. No one could decide how to respond to this strange new development. Most of the Council members still believed they could crush humanity with a simple show of force, but the uncertainty of the situation lingered in the air. The members exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how far humanity had come in secret. Was this just a desperate call for help? Or had Earth truly unlocked the secrets to something far more dangerous? Meanwhile, back on Earth, people had no idea that their small, quiet signal had set the galaxy on edge. On the surface, life went on. People went about their daily routines, unaware of the storm that was brewing in the stars above them. The government received no word from the Galactic Council, No formal invitation, no offer of friendship. The humans simply went on, continuing their work, exploring, expanding, learning, oblivious to the fact that they had just caught the attention of a much larger universe. But deep within Earth's military headquarters, a small group of scientists and strategists had begun to realize the significance of the signals. They, too, had been working in secret, developing technology far beyond anything the public knew about. They had been preparing for something big. No one had expected the Council's attention to come so soon, but now that it had, they were ready. They knew that the time for humanity to take its place among the stars had finally arrived. The calm before the storm had ended. The arrival of the human battleship. The silence in the Galactic Council's chambers was deafening. After days of frantic debate and speculation, the Council had reached a decision. They would send an elite fleet to Earth's solar system to investigate the signals. No one truly believed humanity had become a threat, but there was a nagging fear that kept creeping into their minds. Something didn't feel right. "Prepare the fleet," said Councillor Vadrak, a seasoned veteran who had seen countless worlds rise and fall. He was a firm believer in the Council's absolute power, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this situation. The humans, after all, were just a small young species. They shouldn't have been able to reach them so quickly. The fleet assembled was one of the best the Council had ever put together. A dozen massive warships, each brimming with advanced weapons and the most skilled commanders in the galaxy, were deployed. Their mission was simple: investigate Earth's sudden signal and put an end to any potential threat before it could escalate. The ships sped toward Earth's solar system, their engines humming as they broke through the stars at faster than light speeds. The Council had no idea what to expect, but they were confident that humanity's greatest defense, its isolation, had kept it in check for so long. What could Earth possibly have that could challenge the might of the Galactic Council? As the fleet neared Earth's orbit, the first signs of something strange began to appear. The solar system, which had always been a quiet, unremarkable place in the galaxy, was now filled with activity. Sensors picked up strange, unidentified objects that had never been there before. The human ships were impossible to miss. They weren't large in number, but what they lacked in quantity they made up for in sheer size and power. The fleet commander, Admiral Zoran, felt a chill run down his spine. Earth's ships were no longer the primitive vessels he had read about in old reports. These new ships were enormous, sleek, and powerful. They were cloaked in a darkness that made them appear almost invisible. But there was something else. A quiet hum, almost like a whisper on the wind, a presence that seemed to fill the space around them. It was unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. Admiral Zoran ordered his fleet to halt, uncertain of what to do next. "Activate the communication channels," he commanded, his voice shaking with an unease he hadn't expected. He expected a simple greeting, perhaps a request for a meeting or a sign of submission. But instead, the humans sent a message back that shook the very core of the Admiral's confidence. "Welcome to Earth. Prepare to witness our power." The message was short, simple, and chilling. Admiral Zoran's mind raced. How did humanity know they were coming? Was this some kind of trap? The tone of the message wasn't that of fear or submission. It was confident, almost too confident. And then it happened. Without warning, the human battleships revealed themselves in full force. They decloaked all at once, appearing as towering metallic giants. They were unlike anything the Council had seen before. Massive, angular, and terrifyingly beautiful, the ships seemed to shimmer in the vast emptiness of space. Their weapons were unlike anything the Council had ever designed, shapes and sizes that were almost alien to even the most advanced races. For a moment, the Council fleet was paralyzed, staring in disbelief at the sheer scale of what they were seeing. The ships were unlike any human technology they had encountered. Each battleship radiated power. These weren't just ships, they were weapons, and they were designed for war. Admiral Zoran's voice cracked as he gave the order. "Prepare to engage the enemy." But his words were lost in the vastness of space. The Council's fleet was too slow, too unprepared for what was coming next. The human battleships fired. The first shot hit a Council warship with such force that it was torn in half before anyone could react. Explosions erupted, sending debris scattering in all directions. The blast was followed by a barrage of smaller, rapid-fire shots, striking the rest of the fleet. The humans didn't wait for a second invitation. The fight was on. The Council's commanders scrambled, trying to retaliate, but it was too late. The human ships were faster, more agile, and their weapons, unimaginable in their destructive power, ripped through the fleet like paper. Every time the Council ships tried to fight back, the humans seemed to anticipate their moves, countering with devastating precision. In mere minutes, the once mighty fleet was in chaos. Communications were cut off. Ships were disabled one by one, and those that survived were forced into retreat. No one could understand how this had happened so quickly. How had humanity built such incredible ships in secret? Where did they get such technology? Back at the Galactic Council's citadel, panic spread like wildfire. The news of the devastating battle reached them faster than they could process it. "Our fleet, destroyed." Councillor Vadrak's voice trembled as he read the reports. Impossible. This must be a mistake. But the images coming in from the battlefield were undeniable. The humans had crushed their most elite fleet with ease. The Galactic Council was no longer the supreme force in the galaxy. They had just been dethroned by a species they thought was still in its infancy. A new fear gripped the Council. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. But the humans weren't done yet. With their victory in space, they sent another message, this time to the entire galaxy. "Let this be a warning to all," it said. "We are not what you think. Do not underestimate us again." The Galactic Council was now in chaos. The storm that had been quietly brewing on Earth had finally broken. And now, the galaxy would never be the same again. The reckoning. The Galactic Council was reeling. It had never anticipated such a swift and brutal response. Their fleet, considered the most powerful in the galaxy, had been torn apart in a matter of minutes by the unexpected might of humanity. The reports flooding in from the battlefield were clear. The humans weren't just a threat. They were a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. On Earth, there was no celebration, no cheering, no prideful boasting. Instead, there was a quiet, tense silence that hung over the planet. The victory, while monumental, was only the beginning. Humanity knew that the battle for their place among the stars had only just begun. And now, they would have to face the consequences of revealing their power. At the heart of Earth's government, the leaders gathered. They were no longer the naive species that had first made contact with the galaxy. They knew the galaxy's rulers would not sit idly by after this attack. They had made a dangerous enemy in the Galactic Council. In a secure underground facility, the President and the top military leaders convened. The human battleships that had defeated the Council's fleet were now hidden in orbit, their cloaking devices active. It wasn't just the ships that had changed. The entire human military structure had been transformed over the past few decades. What was once a relatively small defense force had grown into a highly advanced, interstellar military power, unknown to the rest of the galaxy. "We cannot afford to let our guard down," President Harris said, his voice calm, yet filled with a quiet intensity. "The Council will retaliate. They won't stop until they have us under their control. This is not just a battle for survival. It's a battle for our freedom." General Keaton, one of the leading strategists, nodded. "The Council's power is vast, but they've underestimated us. We have the element of surprise, and now we know how they operate. Their arrogance was their biggest weakness." But the President wasn't convinced. "And what about the next step? What happens when they bring in their reinforcements? We've won one battle, but they'll come back stronger. We need to prepare for what's coming." Across the galaxy, the Council was making their own preparations. They had lost face. Their defeat at the hands of a species they had written off as nothing more than an insignificant speck in the universe was a blow to their pride. The damage to their reputation was even worse than the destruction of their fleet. Councillor Vadrak, shaken but determined, convened with the highest-ranking members of the Galactic Council. We cannot let this stand. Earth must be brought to heel. We must show the universe that no species, no matter how strong, can defy our authority. One of the Council's military commanders, a tall, imposing figure named General Zorath, spoke up. We must strike back immediately. We have the ships, the technology, and the numbers. Let's wipe them out before they can do any more damage. Vadrak shook his head. No, we will not make the same mistake again. The humans are not like other species we've encountered. They are resourceful and unpredictable. If we rush in with brute force, we may very well lose again. The Council was torn. On one hand, they were filled with rage and the need for retribution. On the other, they feared further underestimating Earth's capabilities. Finally, Vadrak made the decision. We will send a message, a demonstration of power, but we will also offer them a choice. Surrender, and we will grant them mercy. Refuse, and we will destroy them completely. Back on Earth, President Harris received the Council's message. The words were cold, threatening, and calculated. The Council was giving Earth one final chance to submit. It was a move that reeked of arrogance and desperation. The message was clear: bow to their will or face total annihilation. For a moment, the room fell silent. The leaders knew this wasn't just a negotiation. It was a test. The Council believed humanity would crumble under their threat, but they didn't understand what made humans so different. They didn't understand the depth of human resolve, the strength of their will to survive. General Keaton looked at the president. We've trained for this. We've prepared for the worst. We don't need to negotiate. We need to stand our ground. President Harris nodded. We will not surrender. We will not bow. If they want war, then war is what they'll get. In the hours that followed, humanity's response was broadcast to the entire galaxy. The message was simple, but powerful. It was a declaration. We are not your subjects. We are not your slaves. Earth stands free, and we will fight to the last breath for our right to remain that way. You have no power here. The entire galaxy watched in stunned silence as the message echoed through the stars. The Council had expected humanity to crumble in fear, but instead they had been met with defiance. The human spirit, so often underestimated, had just shown the galaxy what it meant to fight for freedom. The Galactic Council was furious. They could not allow this insult to stand. The war had only just begun, and now the stakes were higher than ever. The humans, who had once been dismissed as weak, were proving to be the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever faced. The first strike. The Galactic Council's fury was unlike anything Earth had ever experienced. It wasn't just anger. It was calculated vengeance. The choice the humans had made, the refusal to bow, had sealed their fate in the eyes of the galaxy's ruling elite. They would regret this defiance. For days, Earth's atmosphere was charged with an eerie tension. A sense of waiting lingered in the air as humans prepared for an attack they knew was coming. No longer would they be the underdog, scrambling for survival. The Council had made it clear that they would show no mercy. But the humans were ready. President Harris stood before a gathering of the world's most brilliant military minds. The full might of Earth's forces was now at their disposal, and they were determined to show the galaxy that they could not be easily defeated. We've built our strength in secret for a reason, General Keaton said, his voice calm but filled with resolve. We've prepared for the worst. We're not just defending Earth anymore. We're defending everything we've worked for. The president nodded. We have one chance to make a statement. If we strike first, we'll send a message to the galaxy. But we must be swift, precise, and powerful. The Council won't hesitate to retaliate. We need to hit them where it hurts. As Earth's defenses readied themselves, the Galactic Council's fleet assembled in the depths of space, beyond the reach of Earth's sensors. The ships were sleek, powerful, and intimidating, each one brimming with advanced weapons and technology. The Council was about to make their move, and they intended to destroy Earth's fleet before it could even leave the atmosphere. The Council's first move was swift. A massive fleet of warships, led by the infamous Dreadnought Venturous, surged toward Earth at unimaginable speed. Their objective was clear: wipe out humanity's remaining forces and send a message to the rest of the galaxy. The human battleships would be no match for the overwhelming power of the Council's full military might. But what the Council didn't anticipate was that Earth was already one step ahead. The human fleet, still in its hidden positions above Earth, prepared for the strike. Their ships were smaller and less numerous, but they had one advantage the Council could never have predicted: stealth. The Earth fleet had been designed to fight in the shadows, and it was this very tactic that would turn the tide in their favor. As the Council fleet entered the system, they found themselves suddenly surrounded. The humans had learned from their first encounter. They knew that the element of surprise would be their greatest weapon, and now they were ready to strike back. The first salvo came without warning. Energy pulses, guided missiles, and plasma charges erupted from the human ships, hammering into the unsuspecting Council vessels. The sheer power and precision of the attack caught the Council off guard. Their massive warships were forced to react quickly, but the humans were already on the move. The Venturous, flagship of the Council's fleet, was the first to feel the sting of humanity's might. The enormous ship, once thought to be invincible, was now surrounded by a flurry of human fire. The shields held for a few moments, but the continuous barrage of high-energy weapons slowly began to wear them down. For the first time in the Council's history, their most powerful warship was in danger. Inside the Venturous, Admiral Ryloth barked orders, trying to maintain control of his ship. Return fire. All weapons, now. But the human ships were too quick, too elusive. Every time they fired, they disappeared into the shadows, reappearing from unexpected angles. The Council's flagship, for the first time, was on the defensive. As the battle raged on, the Council's arrogance began to crumble. Their ships were losing one by one, each falling victim to the relentless assault of humanity's hidden fleet. The battle was no longer just a confrontation. It was a statement. Humans were not to be underestimated. Meanwhile, on Earth, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. The entire planet watched as the fight unfolded. Humans had never been a part of something so monumental. They knew the battle was far from over, but this was their moment to show the galaxy their strength. Back in the Council's command center, chaos had erupted. The once proud commanders were now scrambling for answers. How are they doing this? Councillor Vadrak demanded. This was supposed to be our victory, our retaliation. They shouldn't have the power to fight back like this. Sir, an officer said, voice trembling, they've deployed their secret weapon. Their battleships are cloaked. We didn't even see them coming. Vadrak's face turned pale. They have a fleet we didn't know about. How is that possible? It was too late. Earth's ships were already striking the final blow, targeting key weak points in the Council's fleet. The tide of battle had irrevocably shifted. And then, as the last of the Council's ships fell, a chilling message was sent back to the Council's command. This is humanity's first warning. We will not be your subjects. We will fight until our last breath, and we will fight as one. Do not mistake our silence for weakness. As the remnants of the Council fleet drifted into the void, humanity stood victorious. The first strike had been a success, but the war was far from over. The galaxy had just witnessed humanity's strength, and the Council was now painfully aware of what they had awoken. President Harris stood before the global leaders once more. This is only the beginning. We've sent a message, but now we must prepare for the response. The first strike had made one thing clear. Humanity was not going to be easy to conquer. The Council strikes back. The aftermath of the human counterstrike left the Galactic Council reeling. Never before had such an unexpected challenge to their authority emerged from a single primitive world. Earth's fleet, once thought to be a mere nuisance, had now dealt the Council a blow they would not soon forget. But the Council was not one to admit defeat so easily. Councillor Vadrak's face burned with fury as he stood before the Council's War Council, surrounded by the elite leaders of the galaxy. The once invincible alliance of alien races now felt the sting of a human fist. The Battle of Earth was only the beginning. The humans had shown their strength, and the Council was determined to extinguish it once and for all. "We've underestimated them," Vadrak muttered through clenched teeth, his voice laced with venom. "We cannot allow this to continue. Humanity's insolence must be crushed." His words hung heavy in the air. The Council's military commanders, usually composed and confident, were now visibly shaken. "They've weaponized stealth technology, Councillor. Their ships, they're more advanced than we anticipated," one commander admitted, his voice tense with fear. "And yet they are no match for us," Vadrak retorted, his voice cold. "Prepare a full-scale retaliation. We will crush them. This time, we will show no mercy." But as the orders were given, the Council's underestimation of humanity's resolve would prove to be their undoing. On Earth, President Harris and the military leaders watched with growing concern. The human fleet had made its statement, but the victory came at a cost. The Council's retaliation was inevitable, and the full scale of their wrath was still unknown. The Galactic Council had vast resources, and the humans, despite their ingenuity, could not afford to grow complacent. "We can't let our guard down," General Keaton said, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him, which displayed the faintest glimmers of enemy ships emerging from the distant reaches of space. "They're already preparing for the next phase of their assault. And this time, they won't underestimate us." President Harris nodded, determination etched on his face. "We need to be ready. We've made our stand, but the real fight is just beginning." The next few weeks were filled with intense preparations. Earth's leaders worked tirelessly to bolster their defenses, learning everything they could about the Council's technology. They were determined to find a way to level the playing field and give the Council a taste of their own medicine. But just as Earth braced itself for the Council's retaliation, a new threat emerged, one far more insidious than anything they had faced before. A fleet of ships, unlike anything the humans had ever seen, arrived at the outskirts of the solar system. These were not the sleek, towering warships of the Galactic Council. No, these ships were something entirely different. They were organic. The alien fleet, dark and menacing, appeared as if they had been grown rather than built. Massive tentacles wrapped around each ship, pulsating with a strange energy that hummed in the very air. The Council had unleashed their newest weapon. The Zhur, an ancient race of bioengineered warriors, thought to be nothing more than a myth. The Zhur were the ultimate weapon in the Council's arsenal, relentless, unpredictable, and capable of wiping entire civilizations off the map. "They're here," General Keaton said grimly, his voice low. "This is no longer just a fight against the Council. It's something far worse." The Zhur were known for their terrifying ability to adapt and evolve during combat. Once they locked onto a target, they would relentlessly pursue it, learning and evolving their tactics as they went. Their ships could regenerate, making them nearly impossible to destroy with conventional weapons. "General, what do we do?" a young officer asked, his face pale with fear. "We fight," Keaton replied, his voice unwavering. "We adapt, we evolve. We do what humans do best. We survive. And we'll show these creatures that they made a mistake coming here." Humanity's will to fight had been proven in the skies above Earth. But now, facing the Zhur, they would need more than just courage. They would need every ounce of ingenuity, every piece of hidden technology, and every ounce of their indomitable will to survive. As the Zhur ships advanced, Their enormous, pulsating forms looming like dark shadows against the stars, the Earth fleet began to move into position. The tension in the command room was palpable. The Council might have believed that they could crush humanity, but now, facing an unknown enemy, they would have to fight against forces they couldn't even begin to understand. The first strike came quickly. The Zuhur ships launched waves of energy pulses, each one crackling with deadly force. The human fleet responded in kind, but the Zuhur were unpredictable. They adapted in real time, shifting their patterns and dodging the human counterattacks with ease. "They're evolving," General Keaton murmured in disbelief. "Their ships, they're not just using weapons, they're learning how to counter ours." The battle raged on, a storm of chaos and destruction. The Zuhur fleet seemed unstoppable, but the humans weren't ready to give up. They adapted too. Every time the Zuhur changed their strategy, humanity did the same. It wasn't just a battle of weapons. It was a battle of wits, a battle for survival. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, launched a new counterattack. This time, they used a modified version of their cloaking technology, an upgrade that allowed them to phase in and out of visibility, making them harder to track and attack. It wasn't enough to defeat the Zuhur, but it gave them the upper hand for a moment. The Zuhur had underestimated the humans once again. As Earth's fleet fought back with everything they had, President Harris looked toward the stars, a quiet resolve settling in her heart. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would face them again. But humanity's strength lay in its ability to never back down. And as the battle between Earth and the Zuhur continued, one thing was certain. The galaxy would remember the day that humanity stood against the storm, and it would never be the same. The turning tide. The battle between the humans and the Zuhur was unlike any conflict the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Zuhur, an organic, ever-evolving race, seemed unstoppable. With every strike, every move they made, they grew smarter, stronger. They learned how to counter the human fleet's tactics with terrifying speed. Yet, despite the odds, the humans had one thing the Zuhur could never replicate: human ingenuity. General Keaton stared at the battle map, his mind working furiously. The Zuhur ships were adapting faster than they could adjust, and soon they'd have nowhere to hide. Their cloaking technology had given them an edge at first, but the Zuhur were learning to track it. The situation was growing dire. "Keaton, we can't keep this up," Captain Marlowe said, his voice strained. "They're closing in on Earth, and we're running out of options." Keaton didn't respond right away. Instead, his eyes fixed on the stars outside the command center. The Zuhur were relentless, their ships dark, writhing forms moving ever closer to Earth's fragile defenses. Earth had already suffered so much, but Keaton knew the humans would never back down. He wasn't about to let the Zuhur tear apart everything they'd built. "We need to play them at their own game," Keaton finally said, a steely glint in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Marlowe asked, confused. "The Zuhur think they can outsmart us, adapt faster than we can fight back. But there's one thing they don't have," Keaton replied, his voice growing more certain. "They don't have a brain that works like ours. They can't outthink us. We've been using brute force against them, but it's time for a new approach." Keaton ordered his officers to bring all available resources to his side. As the fleet's commander scrambled to bring his plan to life, he knew they were about to embark on a strategy that would either make or break them. The Zuhur might be unstoppable in combat, but the humans had always relied on something far greater than just weapons: their creativity. On the outskirts of Earth's solar system, the Zuhur fleet began to close in. Their monstrous ships advanced slowly but surely, each one pulsing with dark energy. The human fleet, battered but determined, faced them head-on. The silence of space was broken only by the distant hum of weaponry charging, preparing for what would likely be their final stand. And then, just as the Zuhur moved into striking distance, something unexpected happened. Earth's fleet vanished. It wasn't cloaking technology that had hidden them this time. It was something entirely different. In a daring and innovative move, Keaton had ordered the fleet to enter a decoy formation. Hundreds of smaller human vessels, all equipped with stealth tech, shot out in different directions. Each ship created an illusion of the fleet scattering into multiple groups, luring the Zur into a trap. For a brief moment, the Zur hesitated. They had never encountered such a strategy before. Their bioengineered minds couldn't comprehend how the humans had managed to outwit them. It was then that Keaton made his move. As the Zur ships pursued the decoy fleet, Keaton's true force appeared, emerging from the farthest reaches of the solar system. A handful of human ships, including the mighty battleship Dreadnought, powered into the heart of the Zur fleet. They had traveled in secret, hidden behind the decoy ships, only now revealing themselves to strike with precision. Now, Keaton barked, and the human fleet opened fire. The Zur, caught off guard by the sudden attack, faltered. The element of surprise was on the human side for once. Despite their incredible adaptability, they had not accounted for a strategy that used deception rather than direct combat. The human fleet launched wave after wave of missiles, hitting the soft underbelly of the Zur ships, where their regenerative defenses were weakest. The Zur reacted swiftly, but not quickly enough. Their ships began to buckle under the barrage of human fire. It wasn't an easy victory, far from it, but the tide of the battle was beginning to shift. However, the Zur were not so easily beaten. Their ships, though damaged, began to regenerate at an alarming rate. The humans, though victorious in their surprise attack, soon found themselves facing an entirely new kind of battle. "They're healing faster than we can damage them," Captain Marlowe said in frustration, watching as the Zur ships began to grow back their lost structures. Keaton narrowed his eyes. "We knew they could regenerate, but they didn't know what we could do with our own technology." With a grim smile, he turned to his communications officer. "Activate Phase 3. Now." A sudden pulse of energy rippled through the human fleet as they activated a new weapon, a specially designed EMP burst meant to disrupt the Zur's regenerative capabilities. As the shockwaves spread through space, the Zur fleet slowed. Their organic ships began to flicker and fade, their regeneration systems temporarily disabled. "We've got them," Keaton said, a fierce glint in his eyes. "Now let's finish this." The human fleet surged forward, their guns blazing as they hit the Zur ships where it hurt the most. With their regenerative abilities disabled, the Zur were no longer the unstoppable force they had once been. Slowly but surely, the humans began to take them down, one by one. But even as victory seemed within reach, Keaton knew this was far from over. The Zur were merely a pawn in the Galactic Council's grand scheme. With Earth's defense growing stronger and humanity proving itself as a formidable opponent, the Council would not let this defeat go unanswered. They would be back. For now, though, humanity had claimed a victory, one that would echo throughout the galaxy. The reckoning. The space above Earth had turned into a battlefield like none other. The Zur, once thought to be invincible, had been pushed back. The humans had managed to outwit them, using intelligence and sheer ingenuity to counter the terrifying regenerative power of their enemies. But Keaton knew that while the Zur were defeated for now, the real battle was only just beginning. The Galactic Council had been watching from afar, their silence more deafening than any weapon. The Zur were their first line of defense, and seeing them beaten was a threat to the entire power structure that governed the galaxy. The Council would never tolerate such a challenge to their authority, and Keaton knew they were preparing to strike back with everything they had. Back in the command center, General Keaton stood alone, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The Zur fleet was retreating, but behind them, something far more terrifying was on its way. The Council had mobilized, and their fleet was headed straight for Earth. "We have to prepare," Keaton muttered to himself, knowing full well that this wouldn't be a battle they could win through deception or tricks alone. The Council had ships unlike anything they'd faced before, massive warships capable of wiping out entire civilizations with a single strike. But Keaton had something they didn't, the will to fight. Outside the window, the stars seemed to shimmer as if in anticipation of the coming storm. The Zuhur had retreated, but their retreat had only served to bring the wrath of the Council closer. Earth's fleet, still scared from the recent battle, had been given little time to recover, but they had no choice. The human spirit had always been defined by their ability to endure, to adapt, and above all, to rise when they were pushed to the edge. A message came through the communications relay, a transmission from the Galactic Council. "We have watched your victory, General Keaton. But know this, the punishment for defying the Council will be swift and unforgiving." The voice echoed through the command center, cold and unfeeling. "Surrender now, and we may spare your planet." Keaton stood firm, not flinching in the face of the threat. "Earth will never surrender," he said, his voice calm but filled with unshakable resolve. "We will fight for our future, for humanity." The transmission ended, leaving only silence in its wake. Keaton turned to face his officers, who had gathered in the briefing room. He could see the doubt in their eyes, the same doubt he had fought to suppress in himself, but he would not let it show. Not now, not ever. "We are going to make them regret ever underestimating us," Keaton said, his voice unwavering. "The Council wants a war. They'll get one. But they'll learn that humanity doesn't fall easily. We don't know how to lose." A sense of determination washed over the room. Keaton had always believed in the strength of the human spirit, but in this moment he could see it in his crew's eyes as well. They were ready for whatever came next. The human fleet was small compared to the massive warships of the Galactic Council, but it was not their size that made them dangerous. It was their minds, their creativity, their refusal to give up, no matter how overwhelming the odds seemed. Keaton ordered his fleet to prepare for a desperate, last-ditch defense of Earth. Every soldier, every officer, every scientist would play their part. The Zuhur may have been outsmarted, but the Council was an entirely different threat, one that had no tolerance for rebellion. But the humans had something the Council could not understand: the ability to adapt on the fly, to take the worst situations and turn them into opportunities. Keaton knew that their survival depended on innovation, and there was no time left for hesitation. As the enemy fleet approached, the human commanders began to implement their final plan. It was a gamble, one that could either save Earth or doom it to destruction. They had to make the Council believe they were a much larger force than they actually were, using decoys, holograms, and advanced tactics to create the illusion of overwhelming strength. But Keaton had one more trick up his sleeve. A new weapon, one so powerful that it could change the course of the battle in an instant. The weapon was still experimental, untested in real combat, but Keaton knew that sometimes survival meant taking risks. He had faith that humanity's boldness would carry them through. The Council's fleet finally arrived in Earth's orbit, massive ships brimming with firepower, ready to obliterate the planet. Their commanders surveyed the scene with quiet confidence, certain of their inevitable victory. But as they closed in, something unexpected happened. The human fleet, which had seemed small and insignificant moments ago, suddenly revealed its true strength. It was a coordinated, overwhelming strike, unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The decoys worked perfectly. The holograms shimmered, creating the illusion of a much larger fleet. The Council's commanders were confused, unsure of how many ships they were facing. The disorientation was enough to give the humans an edge, just enough to launch their final assault. And then the weapon was unleashed. A pulse of energy, an electromagnetic wave, unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered, radiated from Earth's fleet. It surged through space, destabilizing the gravity around the Council's ships, disorienting their systems, and sending their fleets into chaos. It was a weapon that targeted the very heart of their ship's technology, disrupting their ability to communicate, move, or defend themselves. The Council fleet faltered, their massive warships no longer the impenetrable force they once were. The humans launched their final offensive, hitting them with everything they had. Each strike was a blow for their future, for their families, for the survival of humanity itself. As the battle raged on, Keaton could feel the tide turning. The humans had done the impossible. They had fought back against the might of the Galactic Council and survived. They hadn't won yet, but they had proven that the Council could be challenged. The Council might have been powerful, but they had underestimated humanity, and that mistake would cost them dearly.